Hi and welcome to Ian Wallace, the Messed Up Counsellor. Going through the process of doing these podcasts, I've got some feedback from yourselves, which is really great. Thank you very much for that. And ideas of what to do in the future, which again is really, really good. And a process of what might make it easier, simpler to access and to be able to connect to. So now the podcasts, both audio and visual, are on a numerous media presentations, Spotify, Apple, as well as YouTube. So you can access it through the Linktree portal, and that will give you options of how you want to watch it or listen to it and where. So it's really good that I'm getting the feedback, and thank you for that. Really do appreciate it. And today what we're going to talk about is something that probably affects all of us, although in the counselling fraternity and the therapist fraternity, we call it the Imposter Syndrome. So that really means that we don't feel good enough to do the job. We don't feel we have enough skills and enough experience to kind of carry out the work. And I suppose thinking about that, which was another suggestion for today from one of the people who's viewed the podcast, is actually it comes into all our worlds and our lives. It's not just therapists, it's not just counsellors, where we don't feel good enough. You know, we will feel not good enough to be parents, for example. We will feel not good enough to be friends. We will feel not good enough to all the roles that we have, the jobs, the functions we do. We won't feel good enough to be maybe a driver in a car. So there's lots of ways that we can experience this imposter syndrome, this not good enough. It's not just counsellors. And then I got to thinking about, well, where does that come from? Where does that not good enough idea come from? Because we all come through a process of learning, experiential, conditional, behavioural. And I suppose we get that as a message, as an idea, maybe not just in words, maybe it was in the way people worked with us, treated us, reacted to us. So that not good enough process seems to be normal for most human beings. And when we look at that, and we look at why those messages come to us, it doesn't necessarily need to be somebody who kind of wanted to make us feel bad or feel upset or put us down. It can do, but it's not always from that. It could be from very protective parents, for example. So, you know, if you had an upbringing whereby your parental figures, not necessarily parents, but guardians, teachers, anybody really who we trust, then they gave us ideas of the world, how we react to the world and interact with the world. And I suppose if they gave us an idea as a drip continuous process of, have you checked that out? Do you know that's what it should be? Questioning our ideas, our voices, our behavioural reactions, what we do, then we would come to be conditioned to worry about whether or not what we were doing is right, wrong, would work, wouldn't work. And I suppose that process eventually would lead to this feeling of not good enough. So because we do lots of things, we have lots of relationships, that not good enough might only be in a certain area of our life. It might not be in all our life. And so that setting up, that idea, that instruction, that conditioning, if you like, makes us question what we do. And then I kind of thought, well, is that a bad thing or a good thing? As everything is, it has negative and positive applications and qualities. So I thought, well, from a counsellor's perspective, I think that feeling of not good enough, which I think most of us have, I have certainly. I always worry about whether or not I've done something right, or I've been good enough for the client or clients. Could I have done different? Could I have done better? All those kind of things. And I think actually it's got a positive application For us as counsellors and therapists, definitely. And I think for most people, really, because it gets us to reflect. It gets us to challenge, think about what we did, how we did what we did, those things. And I think in challenging ourselves, we then kind of do a reflection process of what we've done and how we've done what we've done. And I think that keeps us trying to be better, trying to be more, trying to do more. So I think in that sense, actually it's helpful, even though it's not necessarily come from a helpful process, i.e. you're not good enough. I think that reflection that we do, certainly in our world as counsellors and therapists, makes us or helps us to try to focus and be better and question whether what we're doing is the right thing to do in the right way. And then I thought, well, if we don't have that, if we didn't do that, that might, from our perspective as counsellors and therapists, it might push us into areas of unethical practice because we already kind of an idea that what we're doing is perfect, what we're doing is an expert, what we're doing is, can't be questioned. And I think that's a really dangerous place to be because none of us are experts, even though people say they are. If you're an expert, in my world, you can't learn anymore. You've done all the learning possible. But actually, you haven't, because we can all learn more. There is nobody ever that's going to have every idea and every process in what they do and be experts, because things change, things move, things come differently. So from that point of view, I think that imposter syndrome, that not good enough, can, yes, wear us down, make us feel bad about what we do. But I think it can also make us more aware, more reflective, and condition us to kind of try to be better. And I think that's helpful. I don't think that's a wrong thing. But I think that's really complex to kind of take all that apart and understand where it comes from, how it affects us, our behaviour. And so we kind of have messages and scripts and things that come from the past that inform us about how the world works. And I think those messages and scripts sometimes kind of can create influences on us that are not necessarily helpful. I'll give you an example. When I grew up, I had a message in my world, not that it was ever necessarily said to me, that I was thick. Now, that's not a good place to be. It's a derogatory term, obviously. And I grew up with that. And as I'm growing up with that, I thought to myself, well, I'm not as good as I should be. I don't do the academic learning at school the way others do. And in my day, I'm going back a lot of times, going back 60 years. Sounds an awful long time nowadays. And there wasn't such a thing as understanding about dyslexia and these kind of things. So I was dyslexic. I didn't even find that out till I was nearly 40. And I went into a university in Manchester and did a course. Now you see the dyslexia kicks in here. The word's just gone out my brain. I did a PG dip. And that process made me realise when I had the assessment that they gave me for dyslexia, because I had some issues around learning, reading, obviously, reading books, which you had to do the course. So they gave me an assessment at Manchester Uni, which was really good. And I went with this psychologist and did some kind of process of that. And I learned that it wasn't that I was thick. It was just that I was dyslexic. Now, nobody had ever told me that. And for the people out there that are dyslexic, and there's a lot of us, there really is a lot of us, and we can be dyslexic in different ways, with different things. It's a different ability, not necessarily a disability. So I can say, yes, it's a disability. I cannot read books well, and I can't take information in through books well, which is true. It takes me a long time to read even a paragraph sometimes, depending on the complexity of the subject or the words. So that differently abled, in my world, means that I actually see the end result of something and then work backwards. That sounds a bit mad, doesn't it? So a lot of people learn by trying and getting it wrong, trying and getting it wrong, trying and getting it wrong, and put it right to whatever they want to get. So it's a process, A, B, C, D, if you like. What I do, I've found over the years, is that I see A and then I see F. And then I go E, D, C, B. Now that's my brain, that's the way my brain works, and that's massively helpful sometimes. It means I can find solutions quicker sometimes, depending on what I'm looking at. So I can see what's going on at the end of the process and work backwards. Now a lot of people don't understand that in me. Well, I'm an individual just like you, so I do things differently. But in my world, it makes it much quicker to get the solutions. And I think for me, that has really helped me over the years, because I didn't do any academic process since leaving school with no qualifications, really, to be fair. I always said I had, but I never did. We all do that sometimes. And so when I came into academia, which I had to do for the counselling, the training I've done, in a sense, to get the qualification, I kind of learn through examples. I learn through experiential processes. So my tutors, who were doing the course, I said to them, once I got the assessment and the diagnosis of dyslexia, I said, right, okay, don't give me books to read. It does not work. I will not be able to do it. What I can do is I can learn by you giving me examples of theory and examples of human interaction. So yes, obviously I need to do some reading, but if you can give me the examples, it makes it so much easier to understand it. And that's what they did, to be fair. They gave me examples in order to understand complex theories. And I thought that was really helpful for me personally. So what I do in my work now is when I'm working with clients, I use examples of how people relate to each other and how people work with each other. And then that becomes more informative for them instead of giving them theory understanding. Now, that's not right or wrong. It's just different. But it's the way I've come to cope with it. And I suppose that not good enough, in a sense, has ruled my life, certainly until I became 40 and went into the university. And I suppose it made me more resilient, more conscious of people and interactions. It did kind of make me lonely at times, and still does to a certain degree, because I do feel different to people. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It gives me space and time to reflect. So when we're doing that script, that not good enough, don't see it as a negative process. Don't see it as something that is wrong. See it as a reflective process, that you are monitoring what you're doing and working out whether or not it's okay or not okay. And that then develops us. It makes us grow. It makes us move forward. And if you ever feel that you are the expert, that's fine, not knocking it. But that means that you can never learn any more because you're an expert. I don't know if that's actually strictly true. I think we can all learn more, everybody. So I think there's nobody on the world that is an expert. I think there's people that's very, very good at what they do and very intelligent with what they do, but I don't see them as experts because other people will be able to give them different ideas, different processes. The world develops, our knowledge develops. So you can never know everything. You can never be an expert. So don't worry if you're not an expert. You're human, which is a good thing, because obviously you're dealing with human people. So don't worry about the not good enough. Don't worry if you're a therapist or a counsellor about the imposter syndrome. Don't worry about it. Just see it as a positive process in order to help you to become better at what you do. And that way, maybe, we can give ourselves a pat on the back. Maybe we can give ourselves that, yeah, I'm good enough. Nobody expects you to be anything other than good enough. Ever. There is no such thing as perfection, I'm afraid. Sorry. Because that's like the expert. If something was perfect, then it can't get any better. Can't advance, can't develop, can't grow. So don't worry about not being perfect. Don't worry about not being an expert. Don't worry about not knowing everything. That's a curiosity and moving forward. So if you do have those feelings, those emotions, those ideas about what I've talked about today, challenge them. See if it's real. See if you haven't been good enough. And from our perspective as therapists and counsellors, the only way to know that is if somebody tells you, a client says, actually, no, you're not good enough. But unless they say that, unless they know that, don't do it to yourselves. Clients usually feel that we're really good at what we do. Certainly if they bond with us. People who worry about clients only coming once to a counselling session. And we have a lot of people who worry about those things. Why have they not come back? Why did they not turn up? Why did they cancel the appointment? And that's when the imposter syndrome thing comes in, usually. But they've cancelled because they've made a choice. They've cancelled because they have got what they want from it. Even if it's not exactly what they thought it was going to be, the aspect of being in that relationship as a counsellor has given them something, given them ideas. It developed them, made them think, and made them look at that. And sometimes that's all we need. So if you're a counsellor or a therapist, don't worry about people cancelling. Don't worry about people making an ending process themselves and they're in control of it. Because our work is really about getting the client to make their own choices, decisions and processes. And so they've made one. They've said, I don't want any more. That's good. That means we've done our job. Sounds really stupid, this. But my job as a counsellor with any client is to make me redundant. My job is to make me redundant because my job is to make it so they don't need me. And that's a weird way of looking at it sometimes when I talk to my colleagues. But it's true. Our job is to make us redundant. In my world, anyhow. And I know there's lots of different therapies where people go for long periods of time in therapy, which is not wrong or right. It's their choice. But in my world, my way of working is to make me redundant. If you've liked this, if it's stimulated your ideas, your interests, then obviously come back and see more, quite naturally. It's all archived on the various media presentations that I'm using. But also like it and share it. And if you can do that, then that might help somebody else that you know about that might be having issues and problems that you didn't realise. I was given some feedback this last week with somebody who I'd emailed about, which wasn't somebody I knew was looking at my podcast. And they said to me, do you know, I just clicked on the link that you sent me and then it came up with your details on this podcast. So I looked at it and what I was looking at, what you were talking about, what you were sharing was exactly what I was going through. And sometimes we don't know that. Sometimes we don't know what people are going through. So they can always switch off. They can always not click the link. So like and share if you found it interesting. There's lots and lots of new things that I'm talking about, and people will be with me in the studio talking about subject matters probably every 4 or 5 sessions. And hopefully it will be interesting. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Or listening, obviously, if you're on Spotify or audio. My name's Ian Wallace. I'm the Messed Up Counsellor. Just send me the feedback. Share and like if you have done so. And I'll look forward to seeing you again. Take care.